Not yet. I'm gonna. We're gonna start in a few in a minute or so. Give me a second. Not yet. I'm gonna. There we go. So, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Welcome to Medical Mondays with Dr. O. We're here for another exciting session. Dr. Toyin Okwesami, a family practitioner, HIV specialist, and I treat addictions in Maryland. I enjoy medical missions, and I love this, just for us to come together and discuss medicine, discuss how we can get healthier and prevent disease entities. We bring the best of the best to this platform, and we have enjoyed the best of the best. And again tonight, we have the best of the best. We've been talking about cancer prevention, diet, exercise, and all that goes with it. Tonight, we're going to talk about another aspect, maybe the very first step in all of the process. But before I go there, we all know our brother, our father, Dr. Michael Oye, our own world-renowned naturopathic doctor who has given us so much on this platform. Today is his birthday. So if you all join me in celebrating our very own Dr. Mike Oye, I would appreciate it. Just to unmute and wish him a happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Birthday to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Happy birthday, sir.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
May you celebrate many more, sir, in excellence.
Amen.
And in all goodness.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all you've done for us. So,
We thank God.
tonight, we have a precious woman, Katya Lezin, who is going to share with us some personal story and give us some knowledge in how to better take care of ourselves. But before I bring her on, I'm going to bring on Mr. Harlan Abeshouse from Myriad Genetics. I'll have him introduce himself better to you, and he will later on introduce Katya to come on. Thank you so much for coming on Medical Mondays tonight. The floor is yours.
Well, Dr. O, I will speak for both Katya and myself. And thank you for your gracious welcome. And we are both very excited to be here. My name is Harlan Abeshouse. It is great to meet you all. I am the account executive in women's health for Myriad Genetics up in the New Jersey and Staten Island area. What we do is risk assessment and cancer prevention at its finest. Katya is an incredible speaker. She's an author, and she is a phenomenal storyteller. She may tell you about her desires to be a stand-up comic. So you might hear, hopefully there'll be a couple of laughs for you. She'll probably make you laugh, she'll make you cry, and she will make you want to take action for your patients so that you can help them live a better life and prevent cancer. So with that said, Katya, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, I feel like you built me up a little bit too much. I wish you'd just been like, she's okay. And then everyone would be very pleasantly surprised.
Okay, she's okay.
There we go. Okay, so hi, everybody. My name is Katya. And growing up, I had two phobias. One was of sharks because the movie Jaws did a number on me. I don't know about you all, but as soon as I saw that movie, that ruined the beach forever for me. That's the soundtrack I hear whenever I get near any body of water. And the other phobia I had was of the big C, because when I grew up, when someone had cancer, you whispered it. You didn't say, oh, did you hear about so-and-so? You'd be like, she has cancer. And the reason you whispered it is because essentially you were saying that that person was dying. Like when I grew up, the big C equaled a death sentence. So just about 11 years ago, just before Mother's Day 2011, I came face to face with one of these two phobias. I'll give you a hint. I was not stranded in shark-infested waters. I got a call from my OBGYN that began with the words, I don't know how to tell you this. Now, how did that call come about? Well, I had gone to see my OBGYN because I had a recurring pain in my rectum. Now, you all don't know me well enough, but let me just tell you that my husband and my kids would want you to know that even though that's a somewhat unusual way for ovarian cancer to manifest itself, they thought it made total sense for me because they've often described me as a pain in that very same area of the body. So I had this rectal pain. And the other thing you should know about me is that I am what you all probably refer to as a non-compliant patient. You might have other words for people like me that maybe I'm not privy to, but I was raised by a Swiss mother who believes that a brisk walk outside solves every physical ailment. So I was kind of raised to just plow through whatever was ailing me. So when I had this rectal pain, it was really, really bad, but I ignored it. It lasted 3 days. And then it went away and I went on with my life. But then it came back a few months later. So now we're talking the spring of 2011. And this time I could no longer ignore it. Like I knew something was terribly wrong. And so I called my OBGYN because when you're 46 years old and you're a bad non-compliant patient, that's your primary, right? That was the only doctor with whom I had any kind of ongoing relationship. And the good news about being a bad patient is that when you call, they take it seriously. He was like, wait a minute, I usually have to hunt you down for your pap smear, but you want to come in? This must be really, really bad. And so he squeezed me in that day into his lunch hour. He did an ultrasound and he saw that one of my ovaries had twisted and descended and was rubbing against nerve endings on my rectum, which is what was causing my pain. And the pain had gone away for a few months because it had slightly untwisted, but it was just going to keep happening. Now, cancer didn't come up. I wasn't worried because he wasn't worried, even though cancer was one of my phobias. I did ask him why. I'd never heard of an ovary kind of going rogue like that before. And we had a good laugh because he looked at me with a totally straight face and he said, well, it could be due to excessive sex. I asked him what was behind door number 2. I told him my husband would be astonished to learn that that's what was going on with us, right? I was 46 years old. I had 3 teenage kids. I was pretty confident that was not the culprit. But he was like, look, don't worry about it. You've had your 3 kids. We can remove it laparoscopically in an outpatient procedure. So that's what he did the very next day. And even then, when he was no longer looking through a fuzzy diagnostic image, but was actually holding my ovary in his hand, even then, cancer didn't come up. It didn't look diseased. It didn't look enlarged, which is why ovarian cancer is known as the silent killer, right? Because even if I had shown the symptoms that are typically associated with ovarian cancer, and rectal pain is not one of them, but even the typical symptoms often go misdiagnosed or undiagnosed, not just by women, but also often by their medical professionals, right? I remember running in a race for ovarian cancer shortly after I was diagnosed, and the route of the race was lined with signs that warned women about the symptoms. So you'd be running along and every 5 or 10 feet it would say, are you bloated? Are you fatigued? Are you constipated? Do you have frequent urination? And I just remember running in this race going, wow, every woman here either has ovarian cancer or is going home convinced she has ovarian cancer. Because I don't know too many women who don't have some of those symptoms. So we tend to dismiss them until it's too late. But I had 2 strokes of good luck. The first was that my butt sounded the alarm and saved my life. And the second was that we live in a country where when a body part is removed, it gets sent off for analysis. So even though cancer wasn't suspected, my ovary went off to the pathologist. And that's where cancer came up. So I got a call that some of you have probably had to make, and some of you have maybe even been on the receiving end of this call, that began with those words, "I don't know how to tell you this." And that call served as the demarcation between life as I knew it and everything that followed. That call just instantly thrust me into a new normal of a dizzying array of needle pricks and surgeries and hair loss, and had me suddenly and inexplicably wondering if every family milestone I enjoyed would be my last. Because first, I did the mental Rolodex, and I was like, ovarian cancer, that is not a good cancer. I think that's the one that's known as the silent killer. And then I made the mistake of going online. Rest assured, I now tell patients, do not consult with Dr. Google. Dr. Google is not your friend, right? I knew that I was not in for a fun ride. I knew enough to know this is not going to be a fun few months. But I was going online to get some reassurance that I was going to be able to see my kids, who were 11, 15, and 17 at the time, into adulthood. Nothing online gave me reassurances to that front. You know, it was all about how to maybe add a few months on to making it to the 5-year mark. And even today, ovarian cancer still does not have a very good survivability rate, and it's pretty darn discouraging, right? I mean, I remember slamming my laptop shut because it was so distressing and discouraging. Now, in the same call where my OBGYN told me that I had ovarian cancer, he also told me that he was going to have to hand me off to a gynecological oncologist, that he had taken the one ovary out, but now I was going to need a full hysterectomy. I was going to need months of chemo, and I needed to go with someone who specialized in this. So he said to me, look, I have already vetted the top gyn-oncs in town. Here are your top 2 contenders, because the pathology had shown that it was a very fast moving cancer and I needed to move on this very quickly. So he said, okay, here are your top 2 contenders. This guy, you're going to love him. He's going to be your new BFF. You guys have the same sense of humor. He's awesome, but he does not do the surgery laparoscopically. This guy does the surgery laparoscopically. He's on every board you can imagine. He's a renowned expert in women's cancers, but he's got the personality of a tree stump. So I was like, I'm good on the friend front. I'm going to go with Dr. Tree Stump, right? So I go in to meet with Dr. Tree Stump, and this is May of 2011. Now, the significance of that date with respect to why I'm sharing my story with you and why I'm linked with Harlan and Myriad Genetics is that it was almost exactly 2 years before Angelina Jolie was on the cover of Time magazine and People magazine and had written a New York Times op-ed about the fact that her mother and grandmother had died of ovarian cancer. And she had learned that was because they have the BRCA1 mutation in their family. But before Angelina Jolie, I don't think I was at all unique in having never heard of BRCA, having never heard of hereditary cancer testing. So I'm waiting to meet with Dr. Tree Stump, and true to his tree stump reputation, he walks in the room. And now, mind you, my husband and I are just deer in the headlights. We're trying to figure out when and how we can tell the kids. We're trying to figure out how I can possibly tolerate 5 months of grueling chemotherapy that's guaranteed to make you nauseated when I can't even like go down the driveway of my house without getting sick. And we're terrified. And in he walks, and true to his tree stump reputation, he walks in, and before he's even said hello or shaken my hand, he just walks in the room and he goes, "Are you Jewish?" And I was like, are you not going to treat me? Like, I had no context for this question, right? And in my mind, I'm formulating my answer of like, well, I wasn't raised Jewish, but I know a good bagel and lox when I see one. I married a Jew. The kids are a work in progress. They've had their bar and bat mitzvahs. Now it turns out there's Hebrew high. It's actually a big source of stress in our marriage. He didn't want to know any of that, right? He wanted to know, are you of Eastern European Ashkenazi Jewish lineage? And why did he want to know that? Because 1 in 40 Ashkenazi Jews, which essentially just means coming over from Eastern Europe, carries the BRCA mutation as compared to 1 in 400 in the general population. You are at a 10-fold risk of having this mutation if you are of that ancestry. It doesn't mean that, it doesn't serve as the sole criteria for genetic testing, but it lowers the bar for meeting other criteria. And he was right. My dad his parents came over from Russia. Even though when I told my dad that the mutation came from him, my dad was like, but I was never bar mitzvahed. And I said, well, no one's going to make the gene chant the Torah, right? It's just a question of where you're from. And why did he think I had this mutation? Because I already had 2 other red flags before he had even examined me or talked to me. I was there to see him because I had ovarian cancer. That is its own red flag. Ovarian cancer is one of those rare cancers like male breast cancer, triple negative breast cancer, pancreatic cancer that warrants testing in and of itself. In fact, it's thought now that 1 in 4, just shy of 25% of ovarian cancers comes from a genetic mutation, which is why you don't even have to be the affected patient. If you have a 1st or 2nd degree relative who has one of these rare cancers at any age, you qualify for testing. No questions asked. I also was 46 years old. Not young for purposes of my sex life, but for cancer, that is young, right? These cancers under the age of 50 are another sign that something is not right, that something else is going on here. And so that's another red flag for testing. So I was crying out for genetic testing. But one of the reasons I'm so passionate about sharing my story and why I'm so grateful that you're featuring it tonight on Medical Monday is that crying out for genetic testing and therefore getting genetic testing do not go hand in hand. They should, they're supposed to, but currently they do not uniformly happen that way. And there are so many people who are walking around who should be tested who haven't been tested. And there are so many cancers that could have been predicted and prevented that haven't been because someone didn't get tested. So if you have no other takeaway from my story, let it be this, that, it's not for everybody, but for those for whom it is warranted, hereditary cancer testing, genetic testing is absolutely life-saving and is not a want to know, but it's a need to know. And it absolutely will save lives. Now, for me, the other big takeaway from my story is that my oncologist, even though he was a little bit lacking on the bedside manner front, like maybe introduce yourself before you say, are you Jewish? He was on it with respect to genetic testing. And I'm so grateful that he was, especially back in 2011, when not a lot of folks were on the ball with this. And I just so appreciated that he treated it as a non-negotiable part of my care. I need your weight. I need your blood pressure. You need genetic testing. So again, take this from my story. The way this is presented to a patient makes such a difference in how we as patients perceive it. We are going to take our cues from you. And if you see this as the gift that it is to patients, we will too. So the way it's presented makes such a difference. I am sure that I had to sign my consent. I am sure that he had to talk to me about it, but I remember none of those things. I just remember that the guy in the white coat and the stethoscope who stood between me and the Grim Reaper told me that he needed this in order to care for me. And if you think about it this way, I am not asking you all to go out into the Walmart parking lot or, the Chick-fil-A restaurant and talk to people about genetic testing. I'm asking you to talk to people who have come through your doors, seeking your medical expertise, who have already taken time out of their busy days to partner with you to care for themselves and to prevent diseases like cancer. And this is part of what they need from you. It's not for everybody, again, but for those for whom it's warranted, it is absolutely life-saving. And the only way you can determine if it's for someone is if you do screening. You cannot connect the dots unless you collect them, right? So for me, I learned I was positive, and I won't lie to you. If Harlan had asked me to come and speak to you all shortly after I learned I was positive, we wouldn't have even made it to the happy birthday song. I would have just sat up here and just had a pity party about, can you believe how unlucky I am that not only do I have cancer, but I also seem to have this horrible genetic mutation. How unlucky can I be? The hits just keep on coming. But I've totally changed my tune. And I truly, truly believe that within the realm of bad luck of having cancer, the fact that mine came from a genetic mutation has been nothing but good luck. So now I want to share with you why I feel that way. And then when I'm all done doing my rah, yay for being a mutant, I will open it up for questions, and we can, happily answer your questions, and we can also have a discussion. So the first positive that being BRCA1 positive yielded is that it let me know why I had cancer. It gave me a scientific explanation for how and why my cancer had come about. I find science comforting, and it was helpful to know that it wasn't just cosmic bad luck, or as my mom thought, my Diet Coke consumption, but that there was actually a scientific explanation for how and why my cancer had come about. And as much as that helped me emotionally get my head around it, it also really helped my medical team, right? Like knowing the source of the cancer allowed them to better treat it. And when you're dealing with a cancer like ovarian cancer, where the treatment options are pretty slim and the odds are pretty stacked against you, having something that increases your survivability, that serves as kind of a shield between you and those really grim statistics, is such a gift. I think hope is such an intangible but a crucial piece of the puzzle, especially when you're dealing with kind of catastrophic diagnoses like cancer. And so knowing that those terrible statistics did not necessarily have to apply to me because of my mutation was such a gift. I don't really get the science behind it, but the way it was dumbed down for me is that the mutation is a breakdown in the repair pathway. And so the cells can't repair themselves as well when they're blasted with chemotherapy. I didn't really care why. I just cared that, right? My mutation is what gave me my best odds of surviving a cancer that does not have a great survivability rate. And that was a tremendous gift. The next way that my mutation played out as a positive is that it let me know my odds of getting other cancers. So with BRCA1, you have a 63% lifetime risk of ovarian cancer and an 87% lifetime risk of breast cancer. So with ovarian cancer, those are huge odds for a cancer where we still don't have a great means of detecting it, but that ship had sailed. I was able to better treat that cancer, but I couldn't prevent it because we didn't even learn that we had the mutation in my family until after cancer had reared its ugly head. But I still didn't even have the more likely of the two cancers. I was still facing an 87% lifetime risk of breast cancer. I did not like those odds. I don't know anyone who would, but once you've already lost the cancer lottery, I was like, get them off. I mean, I could not entertain the idea of a prophylactic double mastectomy quickly enough. I had large breasts. I had breastfed my 3 kids. They were a big part of my identity, but I was like, now you might try to kill me. Bye-bye. I know it's an agonizing decision for some women, but it was not for me. So I chose to have a prophylactic double mastectomy. I had what's called a DIEP surgery, which is when they use the fat from your stomach to make your new breasts. Because if you're looking for a silver lining in your cancer journey, I was like, I'll take the free tummy tuck option, please. I actually offered to make breasts for other women too, but they didn't go for it. But that surgery, because it's both the removal of the breasts and the reconstruction all at once, is a very involved, very expensive surgery. It took 3 teams of surgeons. It was a 14-hour procedure. I missed 3 meals in a row. The only way I'm ever doing that is if I'm unconscious. And it cost $96,000. Now, how much did I pay? 0. I paid 0. And that is solely because of my mutation. My mutation quantified the risk and spoke the language that the insurance companies could understand. So that is such a practical plus to getting this testing done. It is not just that the wonderful Myriad results forms are going to let you know all of the medical management that is available to you to bring your cancer risk down. So it's going to identify all the risk, and then it's going to let you know all the different ways that are available to you to bring that risk down. But it also makes it so much more likely that you, the patient, and you, the provider, get to be the driver's seat of picking which of those things you want to do without factoring cost into the equation. I didn't have to say, this is what I want to do for my peace of mind and my family's peace of mind, but this is what I can afford. my mutation put every option on the table. And that's such a gift to patients, right? And my insurance company, as expensive as that surgery was, it was a lot less expensive than paying to treat me for cancer, a cancer that I was very likely to get. And it wasn't just me or my doctor saying, we think this is, a very likely scenario. It was backed up with hardcore statistics and numbers so that the insurance company, it was irrefutable, and they couldn't sign quickly enough. So I had that surgery, which now puts my breast cancer risk from an 87% risk to a less than general population risk. And not just that, but I did that not just to bring down my physical risk, but for my emotional well-being. Looking at those numbers and having already lost the cancer lottery, I would have spent every day going, is that a lump? Is that a lump? It would have ruined the quality of my life. And so I did it as much for kind of my emotional well-being as I did for my physical well-being. The next way that my mutation played out as a positive is, I can't remember if I told you all this at the onset, but I'm actually kind of a medical miracle because I am a 2-time ovarian cancer survivor. So I didn't just beat this kind of unbeatable cancer once, I had to go ahead and beat it twice. When I was just shy of making it to the 2-year mark of being cancer-free, my cancer came back. It recurred on my spleen. And so I was told that I needed a splenectomy. And I was like, okay, I'm kind of running out of body parts to remove at this point, but go ahead and take my spleen. And I was told that I would probably also need more chemo, that when they went in there to take my spleen, if they saw any other signs of cancer, I would need more chemo. And the chemo regimen for recurrence of ovarian cancer is what's called a PARP inhibitor. Now, this was the very end of 2013, not that long ago, but PARP inhibitors were not FDA approved. So I was going to have to undergo the logistical, financial, and emotional upheaval of being treated in a clinical trial away from home. And I'm here to tell you that the only thing worse than hearing you have cancer is hearing you have cancer again. And the only thing worse than that is hearing, and by the way, you have to leave home to be treated. Luckily, the surgery took care of all visible signs of the cancer, and I didn't need that PARP inhibitor. But now PARP inhibitors are FDA approved, and they are FDA approved because of the partnering diagnostic tool that is the Myriad MyRisk test. And so that still factors into my care because it lets me put my cancer on the back burner, lets me enjoy being with you all tonight, and hopefully still get my swim in later, and just enjoy the heck out of every day. I know that it's such a gift that I get to be here. And if my cancer comes back, right? Because I've kind of learned to get my head around it this way. I think of it as a chronic disease. My dad had asthma. I've got ovarian cancer. And if I have a flare up again, then knowing that I can be treated at home in pill form, that's a huge advancement, by the way, because it turns out the only dainty part of my body is my veins. Like they could never start a line on me. It would take like 6 tries every time. So knowing that I can get chemo in pill form rather than intravenously, and that I don't have to leave home, allows me to put my cancer on the back burner. And that's such a gift. And it also represents progress. Now, if I were to look up ovarian cancer on my laptop, I would see PARP inhibitors. I would see some kind of forward momentum, which is also just so encouraging. I just feel like I have to keep hanging on while these advances are being made. And then the final positive, and I've absolutely saved the best for last, is that this is a gift that I get to pay forward. This is a gift that I get to give my loved ones. And I'm hard pressed to think of a diagnostic tool at your disposal that packs this kind of a punch where you're not just helping the patient in front of you, but you have the potential to have ripple effects across entire families and generations. For me, I feel like I took one for the team so that my kids and my loved ones don't have to go through what I went through. Now, I used to speak about this theoretically. I would travel the country and be like, knowledge is power. But that was before my 3 kids were tested. Now I've had to put my money where my mouth is because all 3 of my kids have been tested to see if they have this mutation, that they had a 50% chance, each one of them, of inheriting from me. And by the way, my mutation came from my dad. My dad has no ovaries, but he is who gave me ovarian cancer. My dad was one of 3 brothers. So there were not a lot of women on that side of the family to manifest the cancers that would have given us a heads up, because the main cancers with this particular mutation are ovarian cancer and breast cancer. So this was a hidden mutation in our family until I got ovarian cancer. Once we learned that it came from the BRCA mutation, now all of my loved ones, my first and second degree relatives, qualify for testing, no questions asked, just based on my having ovarian cancer, and also because I have a known mutation now. So my kids, my daughter is Eliza is 22, my daughter Hannah is 26, and my son Noah is 28. And they have all 3 been tested. Noah got tested because he could be a carrier, just like my dad was a carrier for me. And with this particular mutation, he would have a slightly heightened risk of male breast cancer and prostate cancer, but not nearly to the extent that we see the women's cancers. But Noah is negative, so he does not have this mutation. And now we come to my daughters, Eliza and Hannah. They have both been tested and they are both positive. They have both inherited this mutation from me, which, as I said, gives them a 63% lifetime risk of ovarian cancer and an 87% lifetime risk of breast cancer. And I'm not going to lie. I mean, it was a punch to the gut, especially when my youngest, Eliza, learned she was positive. Because even though she had just as much of a chance as her older sister of getting this mutation, I just thought the universe would pay me back and it wouldn't be both of my daughters. And I remember thinking that it was so unfair that they have to be thinking about cancer at their young ages. But here's the reality, and this will be true of your patients who you test, because if you're testing them, chances are good there's been a cancer loss in their family, there's been cancer in their family tree, cancer is already on their radar, and cancer was already on my daughter's radar. I had it twice in the time they were in high school. Their entire teenage years were spent watching me fight for my life. So they already had cancer on their radar. And what this did was it changed the narrative and empowered them. So instead of waiting for that cancer shoe to drop and getting blindsided, they know what their odds are and they can do something about it. My daughter Hannah, when she learned that she was positive, and I said, "Well, how are you doing, sweetie?" Hannah said, "Well, now I really got to get me a boyfriend." And I was like, "Okay, yes, among other things, you'll want to start a family sooner rather than later, right?" But even on that front, she can freeze her eggs. She can even figure out which ones have the mutation. It's amazing all of the options that are available to them. So at one point, they will have the surgeries that I had, right? They'll have a prophylactic oophorectomy and a double mastectomy. But they're not running out to do those things as, young women in their 20s. But there are many things that are above and beyond the normal protocol that are all up on the medical continuum, up to and including those more invasive surgeries that are available to them, that are fully covered by insurance, that will help us bring down their risk. So immediately they both got on an oral contraceptive, which can greatly reduce their risk of ovarian cancer. And they have both had breast surgeons now as part of their OBGYN team. They qualify for mammograms and diagnostic MRIs of their breasts at an earlier age. They've had pelvic ultrasounds to get a lay of the land for what's down there. But most importantly, they are living their lives. They haven't missed a beat. They watched me fight cancer and they said, "No, thanks to that. Tell me what I got to do and I'll do it." And that's really, at the end of the day, if I'm going to have something in common with my beautiful daughters, I would so much rather that it be my mutation than that it be my cancer, right? I've had people say to me, "Oh, I don't want to find out because I don't want to burden my kids, or I would feel guilty." And I say to them, the only scenario in which I would feel guilty is if one of my children got a cancer that we could have predicted and prevented. I didn't burden them. I gave them the gift of knowing ahead of time. I took all of that burden on for them so that they don't have to go through what I went through. And if you also have patients who maybe say to you, "I don't want to know. I wouldn't change a thing. I don't want to know." Well, often we will do for others what we wouldn't do for ourselves. So then say to them, "Do you have children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, siblings? How would you feel if one of them got a cancer that we could have predicted and prevented?" And then often that changes the equation. So I hope what comes through is my passion. I feel so incredibly lucky that I was tested, but I feel equally strongly that it shouldn't be a matter of luck. It shouldn't be a question of where you live or who you go to see. It should just be that if it's warranted, you get tested, end of story. So let's make sure that all of your patients are the lucky ones who, if this is in the cards for them, if it is warranted, they get tested. I guarantee you it will save lives. You will be giving them life-saving information, not just for them, but also for their family members. You will be saving future generations as well. And I just want to make sure that there are more survivors like me, more previvors, this wonderful new word we have to refer to my daughters who get to avoid the big C entirely, and less folks who are tragically and needlessly falling through the cracks. And if taking this on feels burdensome, because I know anything new is difficult and it will add to your work and add to your day, on those days where it feels like a pain in the butt, I want you to remember my pain in the butt. Know that it's worth it, and together we can partner to save lives. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Wow. What do you do with your genes? We know that most cancers occur because of environmental issues. Oh my gosh, I'm emotional. Most cancers occur because of diet and the environment. We've talked a lot about that on this forum. Dr. Mike Oye, Dr. Marsha Gillam have come on to give us suggestions on things we can eat, ways to change our diet, exercise, vegetables. Katya, that's something I want to talk to you with on one-on-one, because regardless of what anyone has, that diet is still very important. We put a lot of junk in our body that we don't need to. We are blessed in the United States of America. And so there's so much, but not everything is, not everything is good for us to eat. Mm. And so we'll chat about that offline. But what about that 10-20% that is genetic? It is important to test. Dr. Ashby tested me, I don't know if you know about dementia testing. We have that too now, to know if you've inherited the gene or not. I got tested. Dr. Ashby, whether that's stand out. It's important to do these testings. And so, Katya, thank you so much, because this is another way to prevent. Mm-hmm. If you know, then you know what to do to avert disaster. Do you know that today I had a patient contact me that he has pancreatic cancer that has spread to the liver. Mm. And driving home, I was upset because I was thinking of, I tell my patients to go do colonoscopy, do your mammogram, pap smear, to test to see if you have any of these cancers. So what about stomach cancer, pancreatic cancer, ovarian cancer, uterine cancer? Because when you do pap smear, it is cervical cancer that we can detect, not uterine or ovarian. Please get that straight. So having tests to tell us these things is cutting edge. It's amazing. We've come a long way. But I have questions about insurance. See, you had symptoms. The ovary had been removed. Cancer has been diagnosed, and we know, insurances will step in because, like you said, it's cheaper for them to do all these surgeries, take these things out, than to be paying for chemo. Chemo is not cheap.
Yeah.
So that's the smart way to go. But does insurance cover these genetic testings, Helen? And which insurances do that?
Yeah, so the great news here is that insurance, kind of like Katya alluded to, insurance realizes that it is much more effective, really, when their job is to save money, not to provide healthcare, but to save money. It is more effective for them to spend the money to test patients to see their cancer risk and pay for either the additional surveillance or prophylactic surgeries rather than treating cancer with chemo and additional surgeries. They save a boatload. So the great news is this testing is determined to be a preventive service as per USPSTF. So almost all insurances pay for this test entirely as long as the patient meets criteria.
What criteria? Can you give
So
us
there-
examples?
Great question. So I've taken some notes as well. I see some questions in the chat that I want to make sure that we get to.
Yeah, we will. I'm going to ask you the questions.
Yeah. Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
So some of the criteria include a personal history of certain cancers such as breast, ovarian, pancreatic, colon, gastric, and endometrial, or a family history. So typically first or second degree relatives with either young cancers, so cancers diagnosed at prior to the age of 50, rare cancers such as Katya's ovarian cancer, so regardless of age in a first or second degree relative, or multiple cancers. So if you start to see 3 breast cancers on the same side of the family, regardless of age, or 3 colon cancers on the same side of the family, regardless of age, those are the indications that a patient is appropriate for testing and will meet criteria, and therefore testing will be covered by insurance.
So, first degree relative, for people who are wondering what that means, is
Thinking mom, dad, brothers, sisters, and children. Second degree relatives would also include grandparents, aunts, uncles, half siblings, and then sometimes even third degree relatives are included. So that would extend to cousins as well.
Thank you. Dr. Ajagbe asked in the forum, is this genetic mutation applicable only to the Ashkenazi descendants?
No.
Another great question. Yep.
Sorry, go
Katya?
ahead.
Another great question. Sorry, Katya. Katya refers to the Ashkenazi population because the risk for the BRCA mutation is so high. But to answer that question, no, this mutation can occur in any ethnicity, race, demographic. Doesn't matter if you're rich, poor, white, black, yellow, purple, what country you're from, these mutations can happen anywhere. And we're not just looking for the BRCA mutations anymore. We are looking at 48 different genes across 11 different cancers. So those cancers being breast, ovarian, pancreatic, prostate, colon, gastric, endometrial,
Wow.
skin, renal, neuroendocrine, and lung.
Is this one test that does all of those?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. So if somebody's dad has prostate cancer, do they qualify?
Prostate cancer is one of these that's a little bit tricky. So if the prostate cancer was metastatic, then yes, they qualify. Or if there's a known mutation in the family. Certain prostate cancers are not as aggressive and not typically hereditarily linked. But we don't need to get too far into the minutia of criteria. That we can always address one-on-one as well.
So if a female has a father, an uncle that have prostate cancer, does that female qualify? Because like in Katya, her son qualified.
Right.
Even though she had ovarian cancer.
Fantastic question. So this is one of the common misconceptions. First of all, this test is not just for women; it's for men and women. And yes, to answer your question, if there's a family, let's say a female patient has male relatives with qualifying cancers, then yes, absolutely, she qualifies for testing. Same as in reverse, in the way that Katya has tested positive, her son was eligible for testing as well.
Fantastic. So
and the beauty of the panel, Dr. O, the beauty of the panel is that as providers or as patients who meet criteria, you don't have to say, the way it used to happen is you had to say, I think it's probably this mutation, so let's test for this mutation. Because one of the things that they found was that there is this overlap. So you don't have to like put all your eggs in one basket and guess ahead of time. You just need to meet that criteria that Harlan was talking about, you know, multiple cancers on one side of the family, young cancers, rare cancers, and it's all pretty laid out in kind of questionnaires that he can give you. And then it's just a question of the pathway to the panel for everybody, and they get the full panel, because sometimes someone might have a history of ovarian cancer, but it's not BRCA, it's Lynch, and now they need to be concerned about colon cancer and doing things, you know. One thing I also wanted to share, another great reason to do this genetic testing is I had a huge risk of breast cancer. My girls have a huge risk of breast cancer, right? You all might be the most fabulous doctors in the world. You would never know to manage my risk and manage my girls' risk because it was a hidden risk. There's no breast cancer on either side of my family. So without genetic testing, if you were just looking at my family history, you would never know that we had any kind of breast cancer risk that was above general population risk, when we were actually facing an 87% lifetime risk of breast cancer. It's only when you do genetic testing that you uncover these hidden cancer risks that may not be present in the family tree, but are definitely there and something that need to be managed.
Katya, thank you so much for that point.
Yeah.
Dr. Aluya, I'm going to bring you up soon. Harlan, we have our work cut out for us.
We sure
This
do.
test, genetic testing should not be for certain people. Katya just made an excellent point. She didn't have family history. There was no family history. She got this from her father, who didn't have ovarian cancer and didn't have any cancers. Until she actually was found to have ovarian cancer, was when she now qualified for this testing. This testing should be rolled out to everyone who is interested in doing that. So we have our work cut out for us. We have to lobby for that. We have to work for that, for this to be rolled out to anyone who is interested, for insurance to cover it. It saves money. What do we do now? We check CEA for colon, right? And we do all these other testings that I've talked about. When we can just do this genetic testing and be able to identify significant amount of cancers in our populations. So Harlan, Dr. Aluya, we got work. I love it. Auntie Tower, you have your hand raised. Kindly unmute. There you go. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, Dr. O. Good evening, Katya, Alan, and everybody in the house. Good evening. I just want to find out, is there a difference if you had one done long time ago? Because I had one done in 2014. And now, with all what you are saying, I don't think all were included when I did it. Do I have to do another one?
That's an excellent question. I'm going to let Harlan answer that. But essentially, great point to bring up. There is update testing, right? And whenever we're adding mutations and adding more knowledge, it's definitely something that's available to you, but I'm going to let Harlan address that more fully.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, we call this a once in a lifetime test because for the gene panel that exists when you get tested, it is a definitive answer. However, you know, genetics is a really interesting science because while we know a ton about genetics, we're always learning more. So these panels always improve and update and include more information. So for example, we recommend an update test every 3 to 5 years to keep up with those panel updates. So actually just about 4 months ago in April, we added an additional 18 genes and 3 cancers to the panel. So if you've been tested prior to that, then yeah, at some point it's not, not immediately emergent, but at some point, yeah, an update test is probably a good idea.
Thank you.
Dr. Craig, Dr. Bill Craig, you can unmute and ask your question. Kindly unmute. There you go.
Greetings, Dr. O, and thank you very much, Katya and Harlan. I was educated in a way years back by a physician who basically pointed out to me nutritionally that if things were monitored nutritionally, and in particular, I'll speak to one particular item, hypercalcemia points to an oncological event going on somewhere in the body. Now, you might not know where it is, but you know it's happening. Cancer is nothing but a protein. It's an aberrant protein, of course, but it's a protein. And all proteins show up in lab tests, lab results, etc. The understanding is many clinicians are unable to interpret that information that's coming through in terms of the lab result, which delays testing, which delays everything, and that becomes problematic way down the road. Thank you.
Hypercalcemia, ALK-phos also, alkaline phosphatase, but thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for sharing that.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. I'm going back to the group chat. Adeshua says she wish she wouldn't, wish Katya wouldn't personalize the cancer. It's negative confession. Now, Katya, let me give you some cultural education.
Sure.
So in our culture, people are careful, especially the Christian culture. People are careful to pronounce negativities. They don't, somebody may be ill. They'll say their enemy is ill. Instead of saying they are ill, they will say their enemy is ill. Because they feel like pronouncing that, saying they're ill, is an affirmation of being ill. So that's where this person is coming from. It's from a good heart, but it's problematic. Unfortunately, problematic. Reasonings like this make it so that sometimes we don't seek the help we need. We don't accept the help we need because we're thinking it's negating our stances. So people have commented on the forum. Our attorney and Pastor Onigmide said, a negative confession? I would rather call this a courageous, vulnerable, selfless, and realistic sharing of information to save people's lives. Kudos to you, Ms. Lezin. And I think somebody else said, cancer has become such a stigma that people from our culture, particularly our homeland, avoid talking about it. Exactly what I'm saying. I have lost family members to this horrible disease. Thanks for sharing this experience and knowledge. And thank you. And again, the statement made is from a good place. This person is concerned about you, Katya.
Gotcha.
Doesn't want you to pronounce this negativity because she cares about you, is what the comment is. But I hope that we take home the fact that it's okay to talk about this to help others, and it's not going to make situations worse. By God's grace, you're not going to have recurrence of your cancer.
And what I would say too is that based on what you just shared, there are people who may not want to get this testing because they are scared of cancer. And it's important for them to understand that the testing is actually their best bet to prevent cancer. So when I say to them, I say, you're not scared of the test, you're scared of cancer. And the best way to find out your risk and to avoid getting cancer is to do exactly this and have this screening. Dr. O, I have to apologize, but I have to run.
I know.
So I just want to thank you so much for having me. And I apologize if there were additional questions or comments, but I've thoroughly enjoyed the ones that I've seen. And I thank you so much for the opportunity to share my story and to hopefully inspire and motivate those of you who haven't yet taken this on to do so. And I wish everyone a wonderful evening, and thanks for having me.
And
yeah, Dr. O, I'm sorry. Please, before she leaves,
yes, ma'am.
Miss Katya, please don't walk away thinking we're unappreciative. That's just one comment. I hope you had the chance to read all the comments there. We truly applaud you.
I appreciate it. No.
If Dr. O brings you back, it would be helpful to a lot of us.
Okay.
You know, because, you know, you're talking about ripple effect from grandfather, mother, whatever. Thank you so much for being brave. Like Pastor Nibide said, thank you so much. Look.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I am not walking away with any hard feelings. I'm very grateful to have been welcomed and to have shared my story.
You know what? On the platform, in the chat box, thank you so much. Thank you, Madam VP. Thank you. We appreciate you. But in the chat box, you will see a lot of appreciation.
Oh, totally. Listen, I am not.
Yeah, excited. You know, we are happy to have you here. We're excited. Thank you so much.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye. Thank you so much.
So, Harlan?
I'm happy to take over for Katya. We've spent a lot of time together. So I have a lot of the answers to her questions as well.
Thank you. And I knew that, you know, and thank you so much. And please tell Katya, I'm sure she read all of these comments. And yes, the person who wrote that, trust me, it came from a good heart. It has been quite eye-opening for me, you know, being from a different culture, what you, Dr. O, and Dr. Aluya have shared with me, that, you know, many people are afraid to talk about cancer, and they're afraid to talk about their histories, including with their family. Now, I don't think that I will be changing, you know, cultures overnight, but I would encourage, you know, this is life-saving information that we can pass on to our families. There are so many people that needlessly suffer, and that will needlessly suffer. Yeah, but, you know, obviously, culture is culture, but I do my part to try to encourage the sharing of information, because information is power. Harlan, you couldn't have said it any better, but you know what? That's part of what we've been doing on Medical Mondays with Dr. O. We've been able to change, you know, we're changing. We've been able to, you know, have these open dialogues. It's an open forum. We share, and many of us are now changing perspectives. We appreciate you so much, and thank you for that comment. We'll be getting better and better. But you're right, it's not happening overnight, but it's happening. Harman, Irish, is from England. Believe it or not, they're 5 hours ahead of us. So when, you know, I know now it's like 8, it's 8:30 or something here. It's 1:30 a.m. over there. Wow. So yes, and you know, we have people, I told you, internationally, and people are 5-6 hours ahead of us. So he said it's interesting listening to this. In the UK, the major issue is getting people to present for being tested, and that is for the more well-known cancers, let alone the rare forms of cancer. The pandemic did not help. And I agree with him. The deal is, I don't even think they have this in Britain. You know, we always have all these things first. And, you know, I'm not saying this in an arrogant way. America is America. It is a great country. It's a great country, and it's a blessing to be here. So we usually have all of these things first. I'm not sure if this genetic testing exists in the UK. Does it, Harlan? As far as I know, it does. You may be surprised to hear this, but Myriad is not only the lab that discovered the BRCA genes, but is actually the lab that created the hereditary cancer test risk assessment.
The initial version of this test came out in 1996. So it's been around much longer than many people realize. It has improved dramatically and includes many more cancers and genes. So yeah, I would imagine that it is available in many parts of the world even.
Well, not the BRCA. I think the BRCA should be all over the world by now. We've had that a long time.
Yeah.
I'm talking about this new cutting edge, having 40-something genes being tested at the same time.
I believe
that's
it
what
is
I'm talking
available,
about.
yes. But that we can certainly look into.
We can
for
certainly
sure.
look into, yeah, because we have our people from Europe also calling in. Please, if you feel, please help me look into that.
Yeah, of course.
We can know. He said the real issues here in the UK, even with our National Health Service cancer issues, are quite acute amongst the Black community as opposed to the general population. Thanks for your presentation. I have been tested recently and tested positive for prostate cancer at a very early stage, and most greatly I think it says, and most grateful for it. And I've started to throw the kitchen sink at it. So grateful for it.
Yeah, this is one of those things, and thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
It's one of these things that the purpose of hereditary cancer risk assessment is to assess risk. So first we need to determine who, based on their personal or family histories of cancer, is already at increased risk. And then second, to use a diagnostic like this Myriad test to tell us where the increased cancer risk is in the body, how high the risk is, how high that is compared to general population, and then exactly the appropriate medical management changes to make in order to catch these cancers early when they are more treatable and have favorable outcomes, or prevent them entirely. So here's a perfect example where, and now I can only speak for myself, but if I knew I had a concerning or suspicious family history, I'd rather know this information so that if something happens, we can catch it early, like this prostate cancer, and we are much more likely to have favorable outcomes. So I wish you the best, Herman, in your treatment, a speedy recovery.
Yes. Thank you. Go ahead, Madam CEO. Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. O. I just, one of the takeaways that Katya mentioned for me is encouraging the people in the medical space to deliver these messages with empathy. Because when people come and tell you, oh, you're going to die if you don't do this, you're going to die if you don't do that, it's not always encouraging. And that we are working with another doctor behind the scene, Dr. Gilliam. That's exactly how she's presenting the information. It's not a question of, oh, like a death sentence if you don't eat this food or if you don't eat that food. So that's really very important. It's encouraging, and it gives people the opportunity to really be vulnerable as they ought to be, even on this space, to ask the questions that they need to ask. It should come from a place of empathy to say, hey, do this, do that. Because after all, we're brothers and sisters. If I've tasted something good, I would want to share with you, right? And if I fell into a ditch, I want to share with you equally, so you don't fall into the same ditch, because I don't gain anything by two of us experiencing something bad. So please pass it on to Katya that, at least that much, I personally appreciate. And the way that both of you have described this thing, it's not even, Dr. O talked about the diet, without a doubt. She also talked about the environmental factors. But when you talk about environmental factors, that we're all breathing the same air, right?
Right.
So this, it's not demonizing anybody that has this thing or not. It's for us to start to form a community of, what would be the right word? Community of support, COS. Yeah, and that's what Medical Monday gives us, the community of support. So I just want to thank you, Dr. O and Harlan. Thank you for all of this eye-opening information so that we can all live longer.
Thank you so much.
Well said.
Thank you. I appreciate you. And I appreciate your wisdom all the time. Dr. Booker. You keep raising your hand and dropping it. Come back up.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. This was most interesting. I had planned not to listen, but I'm so glad I did. And
you never missed. What do you mean?
I don't miss.
You never missed.
I said, let me start off and see if I like it. But, you know, being an anesthesiologist, I've seen some of the stories. And ovarian cancer is such a killer because there are no markers as far as I know when I was practicing. But I remember seeing a patient maybe 25 years ago whose ovarian cancer was discovered at her C-section. That was when I realized they did a C-section and they said the ovary looked a little funny. They'll just take a biopsy, and it was cancer. 10 years later, she was still coming for biopsies and so on. So this ovarian cancer, I'm so glad we have genetic marking. And then also the deep flap, which I love to do. I'm sorry I didn't get to talk to her. Interesting 10-hour procedure, but they look good. It's just very, you have to put in a flap and you have to make sure that nothing goes wrong, so it attaches. So it's a little worrisome for us, but it's really nice when it's done. And thank both of them. I forgot Harlan, and I forgot her name. I don't want to pronounce it. Katya, for such a wonderful presentation. It has moved me. And, right now I'm dealing with a friend who just died of breast cancer. And I got a call and said, oh, she's gone. I said, what do you mean she's gone? She didn't go to her son's wedding? No, she has been suffering for about 13 years with breast cancer, but kept it completely quiet. We just swore her friends. So when they called me, I couldn't sleep the night. I said, I saw her a couple of years ago, but nothing was said. So in Guyana, everybody would say, oh, she has the big C. She has the big C. And then they keep it quiet. So I'm hoping that this would just inspire more people to talk about their issues. And people just don't want, very few of our people, when I was working, came for the prophylactic pelviscopy to do the ovarectomy. But when I had one spot for my uterus and they couldn't find anything, I said, look, I'm old. All these organs are just cancer forming. Take everything. So that you want your ovaries? I said, take it, because you wouldn't find out. And it's too hard to go back in with adhesions. Just take it out, clean everything out. So I don't pay the gynecologist anymore. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. I've had that experience with somebody, a patient that, you're a physician and you know how we think. There's suspicion, take it out, unless you still want to have children. Because if you don't take it out now, it's going to haunt you. But first of all, you have to know there's something there. So, Sister Karen, you raised your hand. You can unmute and speak. But I want to share with you that Katya wrote, thank you for all the kind comments. I am sorry that someone thought my testimonial was negative. I assure you that I am very grateful to be alive and to be able to share my story. Harlan, I'm going to talk to Katya myself and explain again. She didn't think her story was negative. She was saying that she doesn't want her to affirm negativity to herself. She didn't want.
I understand. Yes, I think Katya understands very well as well.
Okay. So there's a question. Genetic. I think Dr. Craig already spoke. So I'm going to pass that on. Madam VP wrote, please disregard. I think we leave that comment. I think we've, she's spoken. Our community is closed-minded. That is why a lot died needlessly. Abby said that. She said our community is closed-minded. So, geez, did you see any questions I'm missing?
There were a couple of things that I did want to hit
The
on.
diagnosis rendered as first a mindset that cancer is a word, something I know nothing of other than it can limit and or hurt at some point, but not at that point. Hence, life, love, and liberty continues. That's Dr. Craig. It's not a question. Did you see any? Sorry that I missed.
There were a couple of notes. One question that was a comment was interesting was the impact of the pandemic on cancers that have occurred. So, my job, I work in the preventive space. We have a team that works, with like OBGYNs, internal medicine, gastroenterologists, et cetera. Anybody who can effectively act as a primary care physician. And then there's another team who calls on oncology and surgeons. So my role is to help prevent, but as we all well know, preventive medicine took a backseat to reactive medicine during the pandemic. So in the first 3 months of the pandemic, there were 80,000 missed cancer diagnoses that should have otherwise been prevented by patients going to get their mammograms, their pap smears, seeing their pulmonologist, because lung cancer was another big one. So being the pandemic has been very detrimental to cancer diagnoses. However, now is a great opportunity to get ahead of a lot of these things so that we can prevent.
Thank you. So, Harman. Okay. No, somebody commented, and I'm going to read this. It says, the person said, "Thank you, Dr. O. Due to your show, I informed a friend end of last year. It was tested early this year and was positive for prostate cancer and with a particular aggressive form of cancer at stage 2, and was operated on recently and had all of his prostate removed. He has made a full recovery with regards to his health, but now wishes to look at his diet and lifestyle. He had no symptoms incidentally. I had symptoms with regards to prostate cancer, listened to the show from last year, and had a recent biopsy which proved positive." So this, as Medical Mondays, we praise God, has been very helpful to change our culture, to change the way that we think. People are getting tested. Harlan, see, people are getting tested. I would like you to please post in the chat box how we can access this test, what people need to tell their physician so that they can get this test. You see what I'm saying? Please, if you do that, that would be great. Madam VP, please, you have your hand raised. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. So the women have the option to take out some stuff and just take it out and avoid all of this. Do men have the same option?
To take out.
I don't know what she said. Dr. Booker said she took some things out.
Excellent question. Yeah, Harlan, go ahead.
Yeah, so we've heard from Dr. Booker about some of and Katya about the options for things like prophylactic surgery, the prophylactic double mastectomy, prophylactic BSO, hysterectomy, et cetera. But what can we do for men? Well, the good thing is that the medical management is not just prophylactic surgery, because that's dramatic. Not all patients want to go through these surgeries. Surveillance is one option. So things like breast mammography, starting at a younger age, breast MRI, CA-125 for ovarian cancer, colonoscopies, endoscopies, for ovarian cancer, colonoscopies, endoscopies for things like colon cancer. There are many surveillance options that we have, as well as prophylactic surgery. Even some medications, for example, aspirin is believed to lower the occurrence of colon cancer, or oral birth contraceptive is proven to lower the risk for ovarian cancer. So there are a lot of options depending on the cancers, and some are just as simple as increased surveillance for skin cancer, for example. Some patients who have a higher risk might go visit a dermatologist where they wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah.
So do Black people get skin cancer?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. So there are hereditary melanomas that have essentially nothing to do with environment or sun exposure. So it is certainly possible.
Yeah.
Skin is
Now,
our
second
largest organ.
question.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Dr. O, if somebody is, I don't want to say last stage, but somebody is experiencing prostate cancer and they've been going through chemo for the past 3 years, at this stage, if the person is not getting better, can diet still help? Is Papaoye still here? Can the diet or whatever, the stuff still help?
Sir, kindly unmute, sir. Sir, kindly unmute. It's muted.
Looks like you took a nap. Dr. Oye,
I'm not sure.
is that his screen?
Yes.
Oh.
And I don't, yeah, it's there. Sir, okay. So it's muted. The diets that were talked about when we discussed diet.
Mr. William Craig is waving at you. I think she wants to say.
Dr. Craig?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Having experienced some of it, the diet becomes critical. You mentioned that this individual is undergoing a radiation for 3 years. If that's the case, that is an extraordinary level of treatment for, quote, prostate cancer. Maybe Dr. Harlan and or Dr. Leah or someone else could speak to that length of time. But as one is receiving the radiation, there is a natural change in the body's ability to eat, to enjoy food, to seek out food. So diet becomes critical. You need to maintain some level of good, and I'll use a general term, good nutrition, just to keep your energy up. Because while the treatment is only maybe 3 minutes per day, but it is an ongoing process, and it does require a fair amount of energy just to keep going. Absolutely. Diet is critical.
All the time.
All the time.
All the time. And that was why even Katya said I would link up with her later, to chat with her. So, Helen, are you writing that in the chat box for us? Thank you.
I do have
go ahead.
I do have
go ahead, Dr. Craig. Go ahead.
Actually, this is to Harlan. Harlan, men, there's been an uptick with men showing up with breast cancer. It has been attributed basically to men beginning the process, and I'm going to go back maybe a score of years, starting to shave their underarms and also utilize things which are basically have a high level of aluminum. Are you seeing that in the UK? I believe.
No, Alan is here. Alan is in the US.
Oh, how is in the US? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Excuse me. I thought you were in England.
No, Hammond
is in England.
Okay. Hammond and Harlan, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, have you been seeing it or seeing it show up in terms of men with breast cancer?
Sure. So I can speak to that a little bit. Things like shaving the underarms or deodorants or things that have aluminum in them, that we would consider environmental. So not necessarily within the jurisdiction of hereditary cancer. However, you've heard an awful lot about the BRCA1 mutation, and you've heard what it does in women. It raises a woman's general population risk for breast cancer from about 13% to as high as 87%, and her ovarian cancer risk from about 1% to as high as 63%. But for men, that same BRCA1 mutation increases our risk for prostate cancer from 10 to 20%. And not only does it double our prostate cancer risk, those are the prostate cancers that tend to be aggressive and metastatic and spread and deadly. And it also increases our risk for melanoma as well. So there is a hereditary link to male breast cancer. And again, the male breast cancer risk goes from about 1% general population to up to 10%. So significant increase in breast cancer risk for men.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to call on Dr. Aluya. Are you there, Dr. Aluya?
Oh, yes, I'm here.
Where are you? Show your face.
All right. Well, first, I want to say thank you, Dr. O, as usual, for your platform. And thank you, Harlan, for agreeing to come on to the program and for bringing on Katya. We appreciate you. We appreciate what you're doing for our community. And I spoke to you once and I told you the reason and why this is important. And you saw the reason why you needed to come here. It's 8:30. I'm sure you've worked. I'm not sure if your company will pay for this overtime, but but the gratitude of Nigerians, both here and abroad and everywhere else, would definitely lead and bless you, you and your family, for doing this. Why are we here? We're doing this because often in our community, we have a whole lot of apprehension. We have a whole lot of fear. It's natural to be afraid of what you don't know. And cancer is new relatively to us back home, I would say that. And that's because a lot of the times we have no idea what killed a family member or not. And we hear stories of, oh, died of a sudden death or brief illness, and there are no autopsies and all that. Now, across the continent, both in the Black community, everywhere, and in some cultural communities as well, we don't tell our history, especially our medical history. We really don't. We don't share it because, one, it seems it's intrusive. If you ask your brother or your sister, or they feel there's a whole lot of esoteric mindset and thought process, or maybe somebody did this to me, or somebody's giving me this. And then the parents don't share their information with their children, either because they feel they're protecting their children, so that they don't feel hurt, they don't feel traumatized, or a whole lot of all this. But again, we're living in different times. Information is power, like you said earlier on, and we must begin to assess this power, grab it by the horn, and utilize it. I've often said we as Black people ought to, one, learn technology, understand technology, adapt technology, and utilize technology. And that's why we're bringing this to the platform, so that everybody can be informed. Ignorance is very expensive. I'm sure a lot of people know that. If you don't know, as we know now, cancer don't give a damn. It really doesn't. It cuts across race, tribe, religion, everything else. And we begin to see this. And unfortunately, in our community, because it's still relatively new to us and we're really getting exposed to this, most cancers are very aggressive in us. Prostate cancer, aggressive. Breast, aggressive. Most of the cancers we see are very aggressive. Colon cancer. And unfortunately, in our community, it's getting younger and younger and younger. I ran a cancer clinic at Rutgers University with the help of HESA grant that I had done with sickle cell. I saw cancer of every type, of the eyelid and of the skin. Sometimes I'm just so bewildered. I'm like, Lord have mercy, Now, and I've seen breast cancer in younger and younger, 30-something, 20-something year old. Colon cancer is a 20-something year old as well. So because we need to know what technology is offering us, we must be able to know that there are options. And the option, the original and primary and best option is always prevention, period. And that prevention begins with a history, sharing your family history. So, and I've spoken about this multiple times. If there's a family history of something, share it with your brothers and your sisters. Because I always say, look, whose genes are you carrying? It's not mine. You're carrying your brothers, sisters, or cousins, uncles' genes. And you guys share this. So you must share this, because so that we can learn to help one another and prevent morbidity and mortality. The genetic counseling and things that we have, and this test that we have now, thank God again, if you look back from, I think, the 1980s, when the Genome Project, for those who knew what the Genome Project came, where they decided to delineate the human genome and identify the locations and what they do and where, and see what mutations are there and all that and all that. We are not very many in that space. We're not. And some people may not understand, they don't know this, that when that Genome Project was completed, there's a whole lot of social ethical issues that came about it, where over 30 to 50,000 genes of Black or African heritage was discarded. And what does those genes say? We don't know, because it wasn't done, and we're not in that space. So we are bringing this to our community so that we can begin to raise our children in those spaces that will stand for us, speak for us, advocate for us in the future. It may not be in our time or lifetime, but it may be the lifetime of our grandchildren and great-grandchildren, so that they will know that these things are here, they are possible, and we must learn to embrace them. And at this stage, I say thank you and appreciate you, and God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aluya. God bless you for that historical background and also for bringing it home. It's important for us, always for us to bring it home. Sister Judith said, ignorance is not bliss. What we don't know can kill us. Please, what we don't know can kill us. So it is important to test. Harlan has, shared a lot of links in the forum. If you click on it in the chat box, it's going to open up on your computer and you can click on all of them. Correct, Harlan?
Yep, that should be correct. So I've included here one of our new marketing pieces called Know Your Patient. You'll be able to walk through that. And actually, maybe would you like me to share my screen for a minute to walk through a couple of these things?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be brief.
Pastor Onigbide said, ignorance is a quiet scourge. What you refuse to identify and deal with does not necessarily go away. Actually, I would say it does not go away. It can't go anywhere. Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing that.
Great. So can you see my screen here?
Yes.
So real quick, these are all the cancers that we look at. On the outside of this wheel is general population risk, and on the inside is the hereditary risk. So we know that every patient that walks in our door has some sort of risk for cancer. We just don't necessarily know where in the body it is, how high it is, or what to do about it. That's why it's so important to use a diagnostic like MyRisk, because it'll tell us if a patient has this 12.9% general population risk for breast cancer, or if she has an up to 87% risk for breast cancer. Or when we talk about men and women, general population risk for colon cancer is 4.1%. Certain mutations all but guarantee that you will get colon cancer. So it is very important to know your risk so that we know exactly how to treat it. We've talked about, you heard Katya talk about some of the different cancer buckets that we link patients into. Low, which is really like an average risk bucket, is a general population risk. Moderate is really more like a high risk. That is if you have a certain family history. And then that high risk is the inner circle, the hereditary risk, the highest risk that we see. So you'll see some more, some of what many of our OBGYNs do on a day-to-day basis, how impactful a clinical breast exam or a pap smear is, and how easy and effective cancer family history can be if we act on it and test our patients. We've talked about criteria. So there are a couple of different versions of these criteria sheets. I'll start actually with a simpler one. This one is just simple yes or no. If a patient has a personal history of breast, ovarian, pancreatic cancer, or colon or uterine cancer at the age of 64. Family members, so these are first or second degree relatives with young breast cancer or ovarian cancer at any age, or first degree relatives with pancreatic cancer or young colon endometrial cancers. All it takes is them to say yes to one of these questions. We know that they are appropriate for testing, and we know that they meet criteria, so that insurance will most likely pay for it. And then I'd encourage you to take a look at this page as well, finally. This is what a positive result looks like. You'll see it'll tell us very clearly that a positive result exists, where the mutation is, and then as we scroll down to the medical management page, we'll see the high risk is for breast, ovarian, and pancreatic cancer with an elevated risk for skin cancer. And then it'll tell us exactly what we need to do per medical guidelines. So for example, for female breast care with this high risk BRCA2 patient, we want to make sure that women know how to be familiar with their breasts so they can identify in self-examination if anything is concerning. A clinical breast examination might happen every twice a year instead of once a year. A patient will be eligible now for breast MRI in addition to her mammos. And then things like those risk-reducing mastectomies and certain chemopreventive agents may play a key role in preventing cancer.
Thank you. That is so helpful. Thank you. Madam VP, Madam CEO, I call her both.
Too many names. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I just want to go back to something Dr. O said and Dr. Aluya also amplified about the cultural, I'm looking for the word to describe it, cultural perspective in which, and I want to connect that with what you said about the gene pool, that it could even be cousins or half sibling. So it's not even just your immediate. So if one doesn't know, even if your immediate family don't have anything like that, or they've never shared with you, so, and you don't even know that maybe your grandparents have it, because in Nigeria, nobody dies of any sickness. Somebody killed them. It's always voodoo related. Sorry.
Harlan, that's the problem. We don't know.
It's always voodoo related.
They hide
Right,
them.
so maybe we could beat the voodoo now.
Yeah, we're gonna beat the voodoo. But you know, in addition to that, a lot of people also do manage care with over the counter. You know, Nigerians are very tough. They have resilience, you know, and they go through a lot of stuff. And you know, because here right now you have a lot of people that don't have insurance. Anyway, where I'm going is, how do you request this test, particularly for people who don't even have insurance? First of all, those who have insurance, how do you request this test if you cannot justify that any member of your family, based on that test you shared, that any member of your family have it? Because if you don't know, you don't know. Then for those who may and they don't have insurance, how do they go about getting help?
This is a fantastic question as well, and it comes up quite a bit with our providers. So if you don't have an applicable family history, the guidelines say they don't recommend you be tested. You don't need to be tested because these are things that are hereditarily linked. However, there are patients out there who love information, myself included, and they say, you know what, even if I have no family history, or I don't know my family history, I'm in a financial position where I still want the test. Well, we offer it at a direct pay option. So $249 makes it very accessible
Did
to
you
many
say
patients.
$249?
Yes.
You needed to have told us that.
Well, so we don't want patients paying for it if insurance will pay for it.
It's $249.
Yep. And then we have financial assistance programs in place. So this is truly, you heard Katya say, we don't want financial concerns to prevent patients from getting the care they need and they deserve. So Myriad has done a great job with that, making it accessible to very many patients.
Wow. Thank you.
And
Thank
keep
you
in mind
so
too,
much.
for the patients that have insurance that meet criteria, 92% of those patients pay $0 for this test. The average out of pocket is $21. So for most, that is pretty accessible.
Thank you so much. And thank you for that question, Madam CEO.
Dr. O, please, one more question, because for people like us that have Kaiser, I don't think you guys accept Kaiser, so you still have to pay out of pocket, right?
You pay $249.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
I don't know every insurance, but there are carve-outs to insurance, so that can be a complicated thing to navigate. But yeah, the vast majority, somewhere between 95 and 98% of insurance plans pay for this test.
Okay. Can you send us an e-voucher for Dr. O special?
Dr. O said she'll pay for anybody that wants to get tested, so you just ask her.
That's awesome.
Yes. Yes.
That's a good comeback.
So, sir, what do you say, sir?
I just said that's a good comeback from the doctor.
Thank you. So, brother Julius Bankole wants to know, Harlan, he says, I know as men, we joke about this, but is there any truth to men ejaculating as often as possible to prevent prostate cancer? Harlan?
That is a good question. One that I do not know the answer to. But
you know what, Dr. Aluya?
I will say that that would probably be considered an environmental risk mitigation factor. So again, hereditary cancers are what they are. We know that patients are at increased risk because of their genetic makeup. Now, I would venture a guess to say that if patients do things that are good for them, like diet and exercise, and stay in general good health, they will have favorable outcomes. But I can't say for sure that more frequent ejaculation would lower the risk for prostate cancer.
So thank you so much for honing in on that. So I hope we caught that. Diet and exercise is huge.
Always a good thing.
Always. So Dr. Aluya, any comment on that ejaculation?
Herman just basically talked
It's not
about
Herman, Julius.
Oh, it was Julius that asked?
Yes.
Well, no, I mean, I said Harlan gave a fantastic answer to that. Genetics plays a huge role. And a lot of the times, if you want to put in percentages, genetics trumps almost everything.
Ejaculation.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm coming to that.
Genetics, yes. Genetics trumps.
Genetics trumps almost everything. So environmental issues that we do can help mitigate, but there's nowhere in any record that shows that ejaculation helps reduce the risk for prostate cancer. It really doesn't, because there are genes that are turned on, there are genes that are turned off. So once that gene gets turned on, either by some virus or some, co-responsive factor, it's turned on. Anything else you do is only secondary at that point. So ejaculation, no, sorry. I don't know any of those, and I doubt that.
Thank you. Sister Wume Kamsin, kindly unmute.
So my question, thank you again for all the information, Harlan, and Katya is already no longer on the line, but I do appreciate all the information shared. My question though is, what kind of information do you provide in order to do the test? I mean, what kind of proof do you have to show? To show that you're.
Yeah, this is another great question, Dr. O. You've got quite the group here. I must say, I'm very impressed.
I told you, I warned you.
You do not kid. So there are millions of patients worth of data that we correlate to the accuracy of the test. So we are very certain that any of the answers that we give you are correct. It's all been validated and everything, these data sets. However, sometimes you do get a result that is called a VUS, or variant of uncertain significance. And again, that comes back to the fact that, while we know so much about genetics, it is a relatively new and emerging science, and we learn more about it every single day. The great news is, and one of the reasons that Myriad is the premier lab for hereditary cancer testing, is because we have a team of scientists that meet every week to reclassify variants and update the variants to either pathogenic or benign. About 90% of these variants are downgraded to benign, 10% are upgraded to pathogenic, and Myriad promises to track down all patients and their providers once we have an updated result in that case of the VUS.
Thank you. Of
course.
Fantastic. Auntie Tower, go ahead, man.
My question on the chat that Mr. Harlan showed, there was something that said tamoxifen as a prophylactic.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a side effect if you use it for a long period?
That is another great question. Certain patients are appropriate for tamoxifen, with the hormonal medications. I'm not sure about the long-term indications. That we would definitely want to talk to either a cancer specialist or a genetic counselor. So yeah, that would, and it might just depend on case-by-case basis as well.
Yeah,
it's
personalized.
And the other question is from a friend of mine that is here in Ngori. She said if she doesn't live here, she just came to visit. How can she get the test done?
Where does she live? I would
Nigeria.
recommend. So Dr. O, we will have to talk. I know Herman has requested the test kit in the UK. Yeah. If patients want to be tested in Nigeria, this is something that I'm sure Myriad would be interested in getting involved in. So we'll talk one off, and then hopefully Dr. O will disseminate that information once we determine.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
And there was question on the forum about what age testing can be done in young men. Go ahead, Harlan. You answered. I know that, but.
Yep. So typically we test patients once they're 18 years old. There are some relatively rare instances where patients or parents want their children tested younger than 18. They can do that just with parent or guardian signature. The reason we typically test patients at 18 is because very little medical management actually starts really before the age of 20 or 25, depending on what the cancer or the cancer risk or the mutation is. So, in that case, if you're not going to start any medical management until 20, we don't want to concern a young patient. However, again, there are sometimes that it's appropriate to test a patient younger than 18.
Thank you so much. We have, believe it or not, an oncologist on the forum, and she's texting me that the tamoxifen treatment, yes, long-term usage over 5 years. I'm asking for clarification. So they should treat over 5 years. So when she responds, I will update you.
Perfect.
But over 5 years. So I told you, Harlan, the caliber of people we have here. Somebody is asking, can we then say, Herman shared that his consultant actually has stressed exercise and diet, like we've been talking about for a long time and for weeks, specifically related to cancer. And he says particularly tomatoes. Someone asked, can we then say that 90% of cancer is preventable, Harlan?
No, so I don't think that's a fair statement. 90% of cancers are sporadic or environmental. So that means these cancers occur effectively at random. We cannot predict them. The 10% that are hereditary in nature, many of those we can prevent via the additional surveillance, chemoprevention, prophylactic surgery. I'll give you one example of one of the most preventable cancers, and that's hereditary colon cancer. Because if we know that a patient has Lynch syndrome, we know that they're when they get a polyp, when a polyp occurs, it is likely to turn from an adenoma or progress from an adenoma to a carcinoma in 1 to 3 years, as opposed to general population 5 to 10 years. So if we send that patient for a colonoscopy every 1 year, then we identify those polyps, we remove them, and they never have the opportunity to become cancerous, in which case we have prevented hereditary colon cancer.
Yep. So is the test, the genetic testing, Dr. Aluya wants to know if it's blood, urine, or swab from the mouth.
Yep. So very simple. It's a single lavender top tube, a blood sample, 10 milliliters, or we have the option for a 1 milliliter saliva buccal sample. Many of you that are doing COVID testing or have been COVID tested have already used the same device for the buccal sample. So very simple.
Thank you. Another question: where there is no history and no genetic indication, and individual shows up with vague symptoms, would tests be run on an individual even though they were in a hot zone?
It could be, right? So again, this is regarding hereditary cancer, not necessarily environmental hot zones. But yeah, if a patient had ever had any kind of concern, this test does not diagnose cancer, it diagnoses cancer risk. So that patient may or may not be appropriate. It might be up to the patient and their healthcare provider to determine whether they're appropriate. Again, if they have no family history, then the direct pay option might be an option for them if they did want to get tested.
So talking of that, the direct pay, Auntie Susan says, please kindly look into the possibility of reducing the cost of the test. So he said Dr. O is paying for it. So
yeah. Don't worry about it. Dr. O's got you. But again, keep in mind, most patients that are tested, they use their insurance. Because we have insurance benefits, we want to use them. If we're paying for it already, there's no sense in paying additional. And if we test the appropriate patients who do meet criteria, then again, 92% of our patients pay nothing. The average out of pocket is $21.
So thank you so much. Attorney, my big bro, Richard Williams, asked if I can send those slides that you sent by email. And yes, he will send them to me and I will forward them to you by email.
Yep, I'm sending it to you now.
Thank you. And the story I told you about one of our listeners who encouraged his friend to get tested and has prostate cancer. His friend was only 47 years old, he wrote here. I wanted to share with you Dr. Maureen Booker, what she wrote here. It's important, especially for women. She said she had some spotting from uterus and was being followed for possible uterine cancer for 1 year. She decided to go ahead and have surgery after multiple vaginal sonograms. She was postmenopausal and decided to remove the ovaries in addition to total abdominal hysterectomy. It means remove everything, and not supracervical hysterectomy. Hence, she does not need to do pap smear anymore, and she does not need to worry about any of those female stuff down there. Just wanted to share that.
Dr. O, sorry, I did it laparoscopically, I forgot. It was total hysterectomy, but it was done laparoscopically. It wasn't supracervical. Thank you.
Fantastic. That makes a big difference. Okay, please share deck with all, Dr. O, thanks. Oh, Ayo, definitely, that's my bro. Ayo, I'll definitely share it. I'll send it by email. So I have the answer to, the second half of the tamoxifen question. Half the women stopped taking tamoxifen after 5 years and half carried on taking it. The trial team concluded that taking tamoxifen for longer than 5 years reduces the risk of breast cancer coming back, and that the benefits outweigh the risk. Women should work with oncologists and primary care physicians because with other risk factors, cardiovascular, diabetes. Cardiovascular diabetes causes problems with tamoxifen. So basically, this is saying that taking tamoxifen longer than 5 years reduces the chances of the cancer coming back. But yes, of course, you have to work with oncologists and primary care doctors because of other comorbidities that the patient may have, other disease entities that, like cardiovascular disease or diabetes. I hope that answers it. I think we beat the tamoxifen question on the head. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, ma'am. So you all know that we are not establishing care on this forum. This is a forum where we disseminate correct medical information, but we're not establishing patient-physician interaction. Will be available to answer questions, and we would always direct you back to your physicians that can assist you with whatever needs to be done. So if there are no other questions, I know that Harlan has worked all day. And if you know how they work, they drive from God knows what to where. It's a lot of work. And he's still up with us. We really appreciate you, Harlan. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. I'm going to include my email in the chat. So if anybody has any questions, would like to reach out directly, please do feel free.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I posted earlier Katya's book. Katya wrote a book that it is a must read. It was the title of her talk tonight. And I don't want to misspeak. I want to read it because I did post it. Did anyone
you posted
see
it in the
it?
beginning.
Yes.
I'll put it in the chat as well.
Okay.
She's got a couple of books.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So the name of this book is "But I Just Grew Out My Bangs: A Cancer Tale." Thank you so much, Harlan. If you please help me post that book. Our books are fantastic.
Say it again. Say it again.
But I Just Grew Out My Bangs.
Okay.
A Cancer Tale. It's in the chat box now.
Okay.
And Harlan is posting some others. Yeah, he posted that.
Yeah, I'll put a couple other things in here in the chat for you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah. So if you go online and just even Google her name, Katya Lezin, you will see, the list of her books. So, Harlan, if you leave us with some parting wisdom.
I think, Dr. O, you have about all the wisdom I have to share. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you, Dr. O, and Dr. Aluya, and everybody that's a part of this. I thank you all. You've been so gracious. It's so exciting to me to be able to do my little part and help people. So I hope you all are inspired by the story you heard from Katya today, or tonight, or early tomorrow morning, wherever you may be. And please, let's do what we can for our patients. Prevention, you heard it earlier. Prevention, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, is one of my favorite sayings, and it is so true. So I hope you all feel inspired to go do something, to help our communities. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you. And we'll be looking forward to bringing you back again to give you some, feedback on how we've done.
Great. Absolutely.